Hi, I'm Daniela, and this is Jocelyn. Thanks for coming back to our channel.
For those just joining us, we're a same-sex couple who've been married since March of 2020 and have been trying to conceive since October of 2020. This is our experience with conception, and today we're going to give a Lesbi-Honest update on where we are now.
For those of you who have been following, we did say that we were going to see an endometriosis specialist, and that appointment has been long awaited. We have finally consulted with the endometriosis specialist.
If you want to find out more on why we needed to see an endometriosis specialist, check out the link above. We saw the endometriosis specialist. Actually, I couldn't go because they weren't letting people in to the office, just the patients.
Yes, so I consulted with the specialist and kept a lot of mental notes to keep Jocelyn in the loop. So during my appointment, she did say things like, your cyst is very small. This could mean that there's minimal disease. But then she also said things like, when you start to see a cyst, this could mean that there's more progressive disease. So there is a lot of contradicting information. And it's not that the doctor was contradicting herself. It's just that there's so little information out there about endometriosis. And a lot of times symptoms don't correlate to the progression of the disease. So they really don't know what exactly is going on until they get in there and do surgery and look at everything laparoscopically. The way she described it to me was like, if you have a white piece of paper and you're just tapping a pen, an ink pen onto the paper, you're just making like little dots, like freckles. So that's kind of what it looks like when they get in there to some degree, but that's why the ultrasound can't necessarily pick up all of the disease because it's so small. But when you get in there, you see like, oh wow, there really is a ton. So that left me worried, but also not worried. Like, okay, well, I don't feel that bad. I don't have terrible, terrible pain like other people do when they describe endometriosis. And then we talk about the fact that like I've had very bad abdominal cramps my whole life. So now I'm at a point where it's just like status quo. I don't really think twice about it. So am I just like numb to the pain or like, so it goes back and forth with the varying information. But she did share with me that my cyst is like right in the middle of my ovary. So it's not just a quick like pop the cyst off. It's going to disrupt the eggs and the egg reserve that are there. And there's no way that we can remove the cyst without, losing eggs. So that gives you a lot to think about because when you're in your 30s and you're trying to have a baby, your egg reserve is the most important thing to consider.
So after hearing all of this information from Daniela, it felt somewhat reassuring to know that there were a lot of similarities in what the endometriosis specialist had to say and what the fertility specialist from our second opinion had to say. So now we have two doctors kind of mimicking the sentiment that we might not need surgery in order to get pregnant, which felt reassuring. But on the other hand, it did feel a little bit uneasy knowing that some of the symptoms Daniela is experiencing definitely is linking to endometriosis, and this might get worse in the future, and this might be something we will need surgery for later on down the line.
The one part that did make me feel uneasy was the doctor mentioned that, your symptoms don't really align with the degree of disease you have. For example, one woman might say, I have debilitating pain, I can't get through my periods, and they go in there and there's not really much disease. Where another woman might be saying the same things I was saying, like, I didn't think I had endometriosis, I don't have that much pain. Yes, I have cramps, but they're not like excruciating every day. And then they go in there and there is a lot more advanced disease than they expected. So it really doesn't align, and it doesn't mean that you're in the clear if you're not having a bunch of symptoms. So it's something to consider and something I'm definitely keeping on the table. And if I continue to have the symptoms that she shared with me and I notice that they're progressing, we'll definitely reconsider it down the line.
So at this point, after we met with the endometriosis specialist And we had information she gave us on top of information from the doctor who gave us our second opinion at another fertility clinic. We had to really take all of that information and reflect on what was going to be the best way to move forward for us. Yeah. Do we want to do surgery before trying a next cycle of IUI? Do we want to just try the next cycle of IUI and see what happens with this new fertility clinic? Or do we want to try to save everything we can and just go straight to IVF? So these were some of the options that we really had to talk about and consider when moving forward to the next stage in our conception journey.
During that reflection of us deciding what would be our next best step, it's difficult. I knew that seeing the endometriosis specialist would like add a layer of confusion to me because it would be the thing freshest in my mind. And I'm thinking like, go get the surgery. And then I'm like, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will help. And we'll be out like 4 or 5 months before we can even start trying to conceive again. At that point, I'll be 32, and not that age is 32 is like that much of a factor, but it always does play a role. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't like wasting a bunch of time when we could be having surgery, or wasting a bunch of time when we could be trying to conceive.
And what was weighing most for me, I think, was just obviously your health. Like it's been this long so far. If we have to wait longer, we have to wait longer. Time has never really been on our side, so it is what it is.
Yeah.
But after hearing the doctor say that going in and doing the exploratory surgery would disrupt egg reserve and it may even do more harm than good, that kind of signaled to me that maybe it's something we don't need to do right away. And my gut instinct was saying like maybe to move forward with IUI without a surgery. So that's kind of where I was leaning, but I definitely didn't want to put too much pressure on Daniela because obviously it's her body and she has to be comfortable with the next steps in this.
Yeah. Like speaking to our fertility doctor, the second opinion one, the one that we're sticking with right now, you know, he suggested and agreed that it would be fair to proceed with IUI and try a little bit of a different protocol and do things a little differently to see if maybe it helps. And in the meantime, we have taken a huge break where I've been like taking a bunch of vitamins on a very strict regimen, getting acupuncture, doing things to help my eggs grow healthier than I have been doing in the past. So I was thinking like, okay, we have taken a long break. We have done these things to get ourselves in order. And like maybe this will turn things around and maybe IUI could work. We did promise ourselves 4 IUIs before we stop trying, so it's worth it in my mind to give it another go.
Yeah, I guess from what we were both feeling, and we kind of just needed the green light to go ahead with IUI number 4 from the endometriosis specialist before we felt like comfortable enough to do so. The last fertility clinic we worked with wouldn't attempt any more IUIs until we saw an endometriosis specialist. And even though this new clinic was really, you know, for it, they didn't need the specialist to sign off on it or anything like that. It felt good to have an added layer of security or peace of mind to know that we were doing the best things that we could.
After the endometriosis appointment, I think I like pulled over on the side of the road and we ordered new sperm. We had a donor picked out and everything. The hardest part is that the new clinic was like, don't use that sample anymore and get a new one. And we were like, that bank we were using was much more affordable than the general banks out there. So like the everyday banks like California Cryo, Seattle Sperm Bank, Fairfax, Zytex, they're a little bit more expensive, which we all know.
Which meant we had to spend more money and go with one of the major banks because that's what this new fertility specialist was kind of cornering us to do.
For more information on how we chose an online donor, I'll put the link above. We did find a donor that really like meshes with our vibe.
Yeah.
And so we decided to bite the bullet and do it. And so he only had 2 vials left in stock.
Of course.
Of
so
course.
We're like, we need both of them because what happens when we lose the perfect donor that we never thought we would find.
Exactly. So then we just had to order both files and have them sent over, which we did right away. We had them sent over, and then we were set up and ready to go for our 4th IUI cycle. We were just waiting for my period to come so we can start cycle day 1. And as soon as that happened, it was probably like, 3 or 4 days after we ordered the sperm?
Yeah, it felt pretty quick after.
We were kind of just like, okay, getting this done, getting that done, getting this done. Everything was just falling into place. And then after we called with cycle day 1, they set up my first monitoring appointment, which was on cycle day 2. I had to go back tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. That's what they said when I called. Great. Then the financial department called me and was like, hey, you still have such and such amount left on your deductible that you need to pay out at your first appointment. And I was like, what? All of this has been covered for IUI at my previous clinic, except for like copays. So that was a real big shock to me. I called my insurance company and they said, it was within the clinic's rights to do this, which again just feels like another form of exploitation. But they did reassure me that, if the health insurance processes the claim and pays them for the procedure, then they'll refund me, the remaining money of the money I paid. So
good to know, but we won't hold our breath.
Exactly. I'm not expecting to get any money back, but at least now we have it's only halfway through the year and our deductible's met, and so we can just do whatever we need to do and not have to worry. But it just sucked after dropping all of that money on sperm to then have to pay out our whole deductible. And again, it just feels like with fertility treatments, you're really backed in a corner and you don't have any other choice but to move forward. We already had the sperm shipped. We couldn't really do anything but pay. So we had to find a way to make it work.
So even though the IUI is the cheaper procedure compared to IVF, there was still that financial burden of buying the extra vial of sperm, which was thousands of dollars, and then paying out our deductible, which was also thousands of dollars. We try to look past that stressfulness and say, we're in it now. We have been waiting months to be able to do this next cycle of IUI, and it's finally here. So at that point, we're just going to take all the good that we can from the situation and just try to be the most hopeful we can about trying to work with a new fertility specialist, use a new protocol for IUI, and hope that this time it works.
One big difference between this cycle of IUI and our previous is our previous doctor would start Clomid on cycle day 5-ish.
Yeah, I would say.
And everything I've read, and when listening to the Egg Whisperer, you should start Clomid on cycle day 2 or 3 because that's when your body chooses the egg from the ovarian reserve. So that was something I was concerned about in our previous cycles, and this doctor off the bat confirmed the protocol that I wanted to do and said that's exactly what he does. They do give Clomid on cycle day 2 or 3. So I started Clomid cycle day 3. I took it for 5 nights. I just finished that 2 nights ago. I'm going to go tomorrow for monitoring, which was cycle day 10, and they're going to check and see if my eggs and ovaries and follicles and lining all look good, and then we will decide what day the IUI is going to be. And then I also talked to them about some backup plans, and what they said was, for the first time, let's just get a baseline, but let's see how big your egg grows. If you come in on cycle day 10 and your egg hasn't shown much growth, then maybe we'll do an injectable to help give it the bump it needs before insemination. So we have a backup plan, which also makes me feel more comfortable and hopeful that we're going to make this expensive ass sperm work. So overall, we're going to remain cautiously optimistic. We're going to not test for pregnancy every single day, even though Jocelyn wants to. We're going to just hold on to the idea that maybe this can work and pray, because we spent a lot of goddamn money, so I really hope it does. It will all be worth it in the end when we have a baby.
Right? Yes, it will all be worth it in the end.
Please let us know if you have any topics you would like to discuss, any questions. We're always open to discussion.
And we're wishing everyone who's watching this on their own journey to conception the best of luck. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe.
And turn on your notification bell to see where we are in this conception journey and how our 4th IUI went.
See you soon.
See you soon.